Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Geek Girl Cosplay Part 4. This is Detail, Decoration, and Couture Finishes. I am Tereshkova Costuming. You can find me also called Torrey. You can find me under that name on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find me on Twitter as Tereshkova2001, where I talk about many things that are not even a little bit cosplay related, and things that are too. So, tonight, details, decoration, couture finishes. Sort of the little things that make your cosplay really awesome, or your costume, or your sewing in general. Um, so we'll go through a bunch of different things. Let's see what's on our syllabus for tonight. Um, Different ways you can finish seams, live demonstrations of ways you can finish seams. Talk a little bit about fabric beading and fabric painting, both of which are finishing techniques for the Padme project. That's our case study, if you will. Let's see. I have many is how many costumes I have. You can see some of them laid out for you over here on my work table, including a project in progress, one other one that you can't see, and the mannequin is actually wearing two dresses at once because I have a lot of things to share. So, yeah. As always, if you have questions or ideas or anything like that, drop them in the chat. I am keeping an eye on that so that we can get those answered. We've gotten some great questions from viewers in the past, and it's always nice to know that I'm not just talking to the little green dot on my computer screen. Um, Although that's literally my day job. I teach college chemistry, and I've been lecturing to the little green dot because my students mostly leave their cameras off, which is fine, but like, human interaction is nice. All right, so let's dive into some of this show and tell sort of as we go. So what I have for you today, what I am wearing today, is not a cosplay per se, but it is a vintage styled couture outfit that I made over the last few years that I'm really proud of, and it actually shows off some of the nice finishing details that I wanted to talk about. So do a little twirl like so. I am the sort of, we can go with detail oriented as sort of the polite way of saying it. And that even though you can't see them, I did in fact wear the appropriate period style heels to go with this outfit. And I haven't worn high heels in like, a year and a half. So it's a fun change. So yeah. So this is actually a 1940s aesthetic piece. Let's see, I should have grabbed my patterns. Where did I put them? No, no, nope. This is a 1940s piece from a vintage Vogue pattern, which I appear to have set somewhere not with the rest of my patterns, which is helpful. I keep all my patterns, well, I thought I kept all of them. I keep the vast majority of my patterns in one particular location, but this one seems to have migrated away from where I leave it. So, but this is from a Vogue pattern that is a 1940s vintage pattern. Like, so this is going to be from, I forget the year exactly. It's going to be later in the 40s because of how long and full this skirt is here. So we're getting closer into the post-war fashions here because the skirt here hits mid-calf, and it's actually a circle skirt. I think this one is a half. Yeah, this is about a half circle skirt, which is sort of fun. And then the jacket has a lot of sort of more details in terms of the construction and stuff like that, which are kind of fun. So obviously the prints are not 1940s. In 1940s, it would have been done out of probably a solid, probably wool. But I had all these great print fabrics that I really wanted a chance to use. So if I bring that in closer to the camera, this is a Captain Marvel comic book print. you've already seen, if you are a regular viewer of this stream, you've already seen my Captain Marvel cosplay, one of Silver, Warbird, Casual Avengers Assemble look, MCU. I've just gotten a new MCU. One of minimum 5 versions of Captain Marvel I've done, and it's sort of like, if you count the times where I throw on a bomber jacket and some jeans and sunglasses, it's probably more than that. But they have, I love Captain Marvel, and they had this fabric, and it's got like none of this is all comics. Like, it came out in conjunction with the release of the MCU film. But why is my I was trying to monitor brief tech. There we go. Where's my screen? Are you going to show me the thing? No. Why is tech like this? I want to see what the chat looks like. It's not showing me the chat. There we go. There we go. Cool. Sorry, I set a new tech setup, and I was like, I gotta make sure I can see the chat, and then I couldn't see the chat, but now I can, I think. So this is comic books, Captain Marvel, right? So this is the Jamie McKelvey cover designs that he did for Kelly Sue DeConnick's very first run. Some of this is Dexter Soy and Emma Rios's art, again, from that early run. And I was like, well, I got to do something with this fabric that showcases the print. So I knew I was looking for something that didn't have a lot of fabric details. That would, it wasn't a lot of construction details that would just showcase the fabric. So that's why I went with this nice big skirt. Alyssa would like to know if that is my most cosplayed character. Yes, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers is my most cosplayed single character. Padme Amidala is probably my second. Yeah. And if you wanted to count the concept of a Jedi as one character, then as a Jedi, I have several different versions, but I consider them different characters because that's how Saber Guild works. So I technically have 2 different Jedi characters, and between the different looks I have for them, it adds up to quite a few. So the skirt is a pretty simple, it's just a big circle skirt. It's got a little waistband. It does have one very important detail that I had to add to the pattern afterwards. I added a pocket because it is always better if you have pockets. Currently, it is holding my lipstick because you never know. But I had to add that in. The pattern didn't come for it. Sadly, it's only one pocket because on the other side is the zipper. If I flip that open, you can see there's the zipper here. So I couldn't put a pocket in where the zipper was. I had to close that off. So it's only got one pocket, but one pocket is still better than 0 pockets. So the skirt was pretty simple. The jacket, again, I had that same pattern because it also comes with a blouse. So it's blouse, shirt, and jacket. And so I was like, well, I want to do something with that jacket, but I didn't know what. And I thought about I could just do it matching and making it the same thing. But then a friend posted a link to a Spoonflower shop where she just bought. No, she posted her haul. She posted a picture of all the fabric she bought. And I was looking at it and going, wait, excuse me, can you tell me more about this fabric? So it's a little harder to see because the jacket, sort of closes up. But this is a Hidden Figures print. It's NASA's women calculators, Katherine Johnson and everyone from the film Hidden Figures. As this sort of cartoonish art style here, and it's got them up on ladders doing their calculations and stuff. And I just loved the fabric so much. I was like, well, I gotta have that. And the thing about Spoonflower is you can print it on whatever fabric you want, like whatever weight of fabric. I mean, they offer a wide selection of fabrics you can print on, which is pretty cool. So I got this done up in a cotton twill so that it would have a little bit of the heavier weight I was looking for the jacket. And then I knew I was going to line the jacket. So the lining of the jacket is this also, it's a Spoonflower print that's this sort of great neon lab glassware, chemistry flasks and beakers and stuff like that, which I thought was really fun. And like nobody sees it, right? Because it's a jacket and the jacket stays closed. But then I can do that, and I can also take the jacket off and whatever. So um, I really love that. And the sleeve, it's fully lined. It goes all the way down the sleeves like so. Um, yeah, so that's really fun. We'll talk a little bit about the finishing touches sort of as we get into how the evening goes, as it were. Um, but yeah, that's my show and tell. And then so rather than do a full character cosplay, I figured I would show off some of the detail work here. Um, and then I did a approximately 1940s makeup. The shimmer eyeshadow, not very 1940s. I will not lie. They were using a lot more matte colors back then. But the rest of what I'm wearing, and we're going to talk a lot more about makeup in our last installment, because that's when I'm going to put on my Amidala makeup. But for this, I shop at a company that does vintage reproductions. It's called Besame Cosmetics. It is owned by a Latina woman who does replicas of real vintage cosmetics and modern cosmetics inspired by that. And so the powder and rouge and lipstick and mascara I'm wearing are all from their Agent Carter line. They actually made the makeup that Haley Atwell wears as Peggy Carter. They did all the makeup for the TV show, which was really delightful. And so I get to wear that. And that, so speaking of entertaining details here, the lipstick tube is decorated just like the ones we see in the show. So for those of you that haven't seen Agent Carter, there's a bit where she's got knockout lipstick, right? So she puts her lipstick on and then she can kiss someone and then they'll pass out because it's got a knockout drug in it, which is delightful. There's some really great shenanigans that go on in there. So yeah, so that one is labeled Sweet Dreams. This is the rest of her kit. So this one is Forget Me Not. And it's got a, quick retrograde amnesia. It's got a retrograde amnesia drug in it. And there's another one. I forget what the other one is. But it's all spy arsenal things you might find useful, which is delightful. And the kit box has a hidden compartment in the bottom where you find the lipsticks, and it's great stuff. So it's super fun. Yeah, Agent Carter Hive Rise. Yeah, it's super fun and it's great stuff. Like occasionally I think to myself, Wet and Wild sells drugstore cosmetics for like $3, right? Why did you spend $20 on a lipstick? And the answer for me is because these lipsticks last forever. So I just put this on fresh for stream, but I can do a lipstick face, or I can do a lipstick and it'll last all day. It will last through lunch and dinner and I won't have to reapply it. And to me, that's worth 20 bucks. Yeah. So, but no judgment as to whether or not you choose to do that. I just occasionally am like, why? Because it's a quality product. That's why. Yeah. So Besame Cosmetics, one of my favorites. And the vintage, approximately vintage face goes with the vintage aesthetic here. I also have my Black Widow comic cover pin on it. Just, no spoilers. I have not seen the movie yet, but I'm probably gonna do the at-home Disney Plus thing and catch it sometimes this week or this weekend. Yeah, because there's a great deal of advantage to going or getting to see a movie without having to change out of your pajamas. So that's what I'm wearing here. Like I said, I just sort of really liked the finish and the cut and everything on that. So yeah. So I think what I want to start with is how to finish seams rather than finish a finished garment. As you're constructing a garment, there's a bunch of different ways you can make that garment sturdier and more durable. And so what we're talking about is, how do you finish your seams? You've got your two pieces of fabric and you've sewn them together. What do you do to make them longer lasting? And the easiest possible thing is nothing. Well, let me The easiest thing you could do is no thing. I had to go ways back in my costume closet to find something like that, because I have chosen to use scene finishes for quite a while now. So what I have here is my Princess Leia movie poster dress. Let's see here. As we no, what if you didn't do whatever it is you're trying to do, device? There we go. Are we gonna cooperate? Come on. Oh, this is why we check. That's working. Why are you not connecting? Why is it not the thing? Is it not connected, the thing? It doesn't think it's connected. Please hold while I find an adapter. I will say that's one advantage of streaming, etc. from home, is that when I realize I forgot a thing, it's probably somewhere in my desk, and I just need to figure out where I stuck it, as opposed to the exciting tours of, well, did I bring it to the con? I don't know, because if you didn't, then who knows? Let's try. Why are you like this? Did I move the thing off? Oh, it's decided it's not gonna... Decided it's not gonna show it? Don't let me... Why is it not doing this? What the heck? No, that's the background. Okay, well, we're just gonna, not, don't know what's going on there. It's not finding the source. Like, it thinks it's got a source, and it's just not finding the right source, which is deeply frustrating, because I was kind of counting on that. Like, why is it not doing this? Like, it's just not finding it. And I do not understand. Like, it knows what it should be. It's just not giving me the window on OBS. I guess we'll just have to do this the hard way. You can kind of just barely sort of in the background see what I'm meaning to use as my reference for this particular costume. Why is it like this? Nobody knows. Pictures, costume references. We're just gonna do the awkward thing where you get to look at my window and you get an infinite recursion. So this is the classic one of like two classic posters, right? For Star Wars. And Princess Leia has this nice white dress that's very flowy and voluminous, and it kind of looks like one that's in the movie, but not entirely. And I was like, you know what would be kind of fun? To do that. Like, that sounds cool. Let's do that. So I did. Now it's a little hard to parse because I'm not in it and the dress doesn't have a lot of shape if you don't have a human being in it. So it's kind of a long, piece of white linen here. It's got sort of a cape wings sort of a deal going on in the back. It's got a seam up the front. But this dress, which I made in 2013, I think, 2012 or 2013, I actually wore and competed in at the very, very first GeekGirlCon. So that was 2011, wasn't it? Yeah, GeekGirlCon, the first was, I'm pretty sure 2011. I think that's right. Somebody who remembers better than me can say so in chat if I'm wrong. So I've had this dress for a while. And of course, it's white on white, and you can't see the details because it's not doing the thing that I want it to do. But what you can kind of see that the edges of the fabric are pretty frayed here. Because what happened is I sewed it, right? And I sewed it. I sewed the things together, and that's all I did. So yeah. So if I peel that apart, you can see there's a seam down the middle, and both of the edges have started to fray. Now, linen is a fabric that frays a lot. Like I kind of, I'm not surprised that this has happened. Because I've washed this dress a lot. Linen is a very machine washable fabric, which is great. So I was gonna, do that. And the fabric has frayed, which is fine, known issue. But it does mean there's kind of, if I keep washing this and keep wearing it, it's a possibility that the fraying could actually damage the garment. If it keeps fraying and it frays through where that seam line is, then I'm going to have runs and frays in my dress, and I would not appreciate that. So, this, and again, it's been worn for a while, so this dress doesn't have a finished side seams, and it's showing some wear. The very center top of it is lined. You can kind of see how it gets more sheer towards the middle here. So you can, it's more sheer, and then it's a little more opaque further up. That's the lining, which pretty much is just right over the bust. And on the inside of it, you can again see I've got all these stringy bits coming off of it and not great stuff because none of the seams are finished. So you're never required to finish seams. The cosplay police will not make you finish your seams. There is no such thing. But for durability, it's nice. So that's where I started, was not bothering to finish seams. And if I made that in 2010, that feels about right. Like, I have costumes from 2012 that don't have their seams finished. This was just the easiest one to grab that y'all hadn't already seen. But since then, I've been trying to finish seams more and more, because you get better longevity. So, the next thing I have, let me go ahead. Let's try one more time. Video capture device, new source. Oh, well, it's because I unplugged it. Nope. Yes. There we go. Now it's showing up twice. I hate everything about this game. There we go. There we go. Now you can see my very classy computer setup here where I have a textbook that my computer is propped on. Cool. All right. So now, yes, that is working. That is working. What is my... Now there's a chat comment, and the chat comment has... We're just gonna hear. You can admire my garment over the shoulder while I fix my tech issues. What even has happened? Come on, no, just reconnect. We appreciate your patience. Volumnia wanted to know, is it possible to reseal the seams on the linen, or would that change the garment? Um, Depending on how bad the fraying is. So now that I've got my alternate here, we can, and again, it's white on white, so it'll always be a little tricky to see. Depending on how badly the fraying is, it's possible that I could go through and like serge or finish these edges. If it is frayed in too much, so if the frayed line were too close to that stitching line, then it wouldn't work. Then I'd try and do it and it would just like, there wouldn't be enough. If it had frayed too far and I still wanted to save it, I could try that, and the result would be to take in the side seams a little bit. And I made this dress 10 years ago and it already only barely fits. Because over the past 10 years, I am not as quite as skinny as I used to be, which is fine, but it probably wouldn't still fit this particular garment in this case, because of the way it's made and the way it fits me or doesn't fit me. So in practice, I honestly don't wear this super often anymore. Because a lot of my old costumes I just don't wear as much because I'm on to bigger and better and newer things. And this one, then the fit issue. And the fact that I've had a few people be jerks to me about it because it is slit very high up the hip as designed by intention, and people are occasionally jerks about it. And so I just don't wear it quite as much as I used to. Because people are jerks. Yeah. So, but you could go through and refinish it probably, but it might change the fit a little bit. All right. So what if you decide you want to finish your garment seams, but you're not sure you want to commit to buying a serger yet or at all? That's this garment here is, there's a lot of things I want to talk about on this garment, but that's one of them here. So this is, I am really, really happy with this outfit, and it's super, super obscure. I would take guesses in the chat, except I'm sure no one would figure out what this is. So one of my very favorite movies is Pacific Rim from 2013. Because in Pacific Rim, they giant robots powered by friendship punch giant monsters. That's it. That's the movie. If that sounds like the kind of thing you like, then you're gonna love the movie. And if it does not sound like the kind of thing you like, then yeah, it's probably not for you. It does exactly what it says on the tin. So these big giant robots, and they punch, and the robots move like boxers, right? And the hero robot is called, well, I like to call her Lady Danger. The official name of the robot is Gypsy Danger, but Gypsy is a slur for Romani people that I don't use whenever possible. So I call her Lady Danger. And actually, a lot of the fandom picked up on that too, which is nice, to sort of get away from that. The robot is named after the airplanes, the Gypsy Moth airplane, but again, that still sort of tracks back. So this is my Lady Danger couture dress, because in the world of the movie, people went nuts for the Jaegers, for the giant robots, and they loved them, and they did merchandise and art and action figures, and we see this in the film. And so I thought to myself, and I'd been watching a lot of Project Runway at the time too. And I thought to myself, okay, but what what's the avant-garde high couture fashion line inspired by these Jaegers? So this is the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps, 2025 or whatever year collection for Lady Danger. Bring that a little closer in here. It is silk dupioni. So it has this great ribbed texture like metal. All of this is pleating here. I can slide my fingers under that. All of this pleating and this seam detail replicates pleating from the actual Jaeger. The trim, the Jaeger's got red trim on her. She's got legs because she's a walking robot, so I put the center panel to kind of give that impression of the legs, but have it still be a skirt like so. And this is a separate short bolero jacket over the top. So it comes off. I did this fabric sculpture to represent the nuclear core. The engine that powers the Jaeger has this very big, looks a lot like an arc reactor, to be perfectly honest. So I copied that in fabric. This is actually sculptural detail. Let's bring back our second camera here as I trail cables everywhere. This is actually three-dimensional sculpted. How was my camera angle? There we go. Three-dimensional sculpted. So there's a base piece, and then these little cones. I can't really steam them, but I should go through and sort of press or steam them open so they stand out a little better, like so. But I actually put that, and this I copied directly from one of the Project Runway contestants in that year. It's actually two different layers to copy that look. So that's some of the finishing detail and getting all these pleats lined up exactly right. Yeah. And so this was, if the film was 2013, then I have to have made this in, like, I think 2014, late 2013, because the film was like a summer blockbuster. And so the way I finished these, no, wait, these ones I Frenched. All right, cool. These ones are zigzag. No, yes, there we go. One of the ways you can finish, they're actually not on this garment, but we're gonna talk zigzags anyway because we're talking about this in order here. If you do not have a serger, you can hold still. There we go. If you don't have a serger, you can do a zigzag stitch where you take the line of your seam here. So you cannot see because I can't hold on to this, but we're going to get there in a sec. So you take your garment where you have a seam, like so, and then you do a zigzag stitch over the edge. So the zigzag stitch here is in darker blue, which is nice because it shows up. And you just, your regular, ordinary sewing machine, unless it is a super, super, super basic machine, if it's somewhere in that $100 to $200 price range, it'll have a zigzag stitch, and anything bigger than that, definitely. You don't need a fancy machine to get a zigzag stitch. But you just run a little zigzag stitch where the machine, and sometimes I think this may actually even be the machine's overlock. No, it's a zigzag stitch. You can kind of see how it's like little triangles, like little zigzag lines. And what happens is that it actually, the sewing needles go zigzag, 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 zigzag. But they do it a little better than I do. Can you focus for me? No. So they do a nice zigzag right along, there's the edge of your fabric, you do the zigzag, and that helps prevent fraying. Because as it starts to fray, the fabric stitches block the fraying. So you can just sew a zigzag. As long as you have a sewing machine, you can do that. And so what I've done on this, and we're going to explain this garment in a minute here. What I've done on that garment is just sew that zigzag so that the seam doesn't fray. So it's just held trapped in place. Cool. So anything, as long as you have a sewing machine, you can do a zigzag stitch. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, we're going to come back to fabric painting. One of the other things I did Lady Danger has these big number 34s on her shoulders because she does, honestly. I was gonna try and put a percentage, but like everything in that movie is because it's cool. And like planes sometimes have numbers on their, like tail numbers or whatever. So it's partly that, and it's partly so she looks like a football linebacker with her big shoulder pads and her numbers on them. So I put those on with fabric paint. Yeah. The other thing, so my mannequin is not quite the same size I am, so it doesn't zip all the way up the back on the mannequin, unfortunately. Um, but I actually put some different colors. So I went to a steel gray up the back, and I have this big, heavy, exposed zipper, like deliberately big, chunky zipper, um, again to give sort of that industrial finished feel here. And this underdress is a sleeveless dress here because it captured like that. This has the zigzag shapes of the Jaeger plating. And then the jacket over it with the trim and the big cuffs because Lady Danger has these big arm plating that kind of looks like arm guards. But so I just put them on the cuffs. Um, I really love this dress. Like I said, nobody gets it unless we're already in a Pacific Rim fandom context. Like if I'm at like I went to a couple Pacific Rim themed conventions right when the movie came out. And then people were like, "Oh yeah, it's Lady Danger." And I got some great photos. But if I don't tell people that's what it is, nobody gets it. I've accepted this about it because I love it so much. I love the fabric. It was an excuse to use this gorgeous $25 a yard Dupioni. That's why it's a short knee length skirt, by the way, is because the fabric is $25 a yard. Um, is sort of like, how can I minimize the amount of fabric I need? So it's this real short crop jacket and this tight short skirt because I didn't want to spend quite as much as I have spent on some of my later costumes. Yeah. So we're going to come back to the fabric painting because right now we are still talking seam details. So fabric painting, these can hang out. So zigzags are a good solution when you want to do a little bit of protecting and you don't have a serger. But if you do have a serger, if you want to level up your sewing a little bit, give me a sec here to disconnect. If you want to level up your sewing, the best thing you can buy, we're going to just go J.J. Abrams lens flare for a minute. Apparently the sun will get over itself before too long. The best investment you can make is a serger. So this is my sewing machine. I think I've put them on camera before. This is my sewing machine. It bears the royal symbol of the Royal House of Naboo from Queen Amidala's costumes, because why not? Whereas my serger is decorated for Space Waffle Temple, which I believe I told this story. Oh, I told it on the mask making stream, so you can go back and catch it on those videos. But this is my serger. You should be a little afraid of your serger. Honestly, like people are like, "Oh, those are scary," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've had them ruin people's garments before." But like, they're also really great. So what you need to do with your serger is figure out what demons to sacrifice to it, or in what demon's name you make sacrifices. And once you figure that out, you get along great. My serger, I don't understand. My serger has never been happier than when it is sewing yards and yards of patio furniture fabric. So this garment is entirely serge, which we're going to cover that. But this is outdoor patio furniture fabric. This is what you use if you want to do custom furniture, cushion covers or something that's going to be left outside in the rain and the weather for, months. It's thick, it's plasticky, it does not breathe, it has no give, it's really, really heavy, and my serger loves it. My serger is never smoother, better feed, never better than when it's on this stuff. However, that's a finished garment. I wanted to go ahead and demonstrate the kind of finish that you get from a serger here. So what I've got are a couple strips of almost black fabric. These are offcuts that Spoonflower, again, did the printed up, or somebody put on Spoonflower, and I said, yes, give, the part of the Hubble Deep Field photograph, which is what happened when they took the Hubble Space Telescope, which I sure hope they are going to be able to fix soon. Hubble had a computer issue. But they just pointed Hubble at a patch of dark sky and said, take a picture. And it was full of galaxies. Like it's mine. So every dot you see here is a galaxy. There's no stars. There's like 2 stars in the entire image. They're all galaxies. It's magnificent. But it's mostly black, which is why I wanted it here, because I want to demonstrate this for you. And my serger's got white thread in it right now. And I love y'all and enjoy this. And I wasn't going to rethread my serger because that is a process. So the serger takes you start with an existing seam before you feed it into the serger. So we're gonna bring our little dual camera setup. In order to have an existing seam, we're gonna start by sewing with the sewing machine. I gotta say, having both my sewing machine and my serger set up so I can access them simultaneously is really, really nice. Really nice. So, please give chat feedback if the sound of the machines running is too obnoxious because I've got my headset mic on. If that's too obnoxious, please let me know and I will make sure I mute when I'm doing that. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and run this. So I'm just gonna sew a standard 5/8 inch seam. Ta-da. So convenient. This is the bright red orange solar cherry fabric thread in it, so you can see that pretty well too. So I've sewn my seam. Normally you do these things with the wrong sides together, but I wanted it to be sort of real obvious, so I did it this way. See, this could eventually fray over time if I just left it. If I were done, I would iron this seam flat. I would press this seam flat if I weren't choosing to do some other finish. If I really wanted to press my seams flat, I could serge individually the edges of all my pattern pieces before I sew them together. So then I could press the seams flat, but the edges would still be protected. So that's another thing you could do. Then we're going to come over here to the serger. The serger is also labeled with how it functions. You can see I've tagged the different colors for what parts of the machine they correspond to. And then I labeled these. So 1, UL, 2, and then those correspond down here so that I know what order to thread them in. Because threading the serger is kind of an intimidating process because you've got 4 bits of thread and they got to run through 2 different needles. Can we see those? Not super well. 2 different needles here. And if I pop the interior open real quick, there's a whole lot going on in there, which is kind of horrifying. So I have carefully labeled it because scientist, again, sound is okay, Volumnia says. Thank you, Volumnia. I appreciate you very much. So the guts of a serger are deep and scary, but as a scientist, I have carefully labeled and color-coded everything, and honestly, it has a pretty good labeling in there to begin with. So, yeah, all right. So over here at the sewing end, it looks kind of like a regular sewing machine, sort of. I also labeled it with what size of Allen wrench I need to change the needles because I need an Allen wrench. So I went ahead and tagged that as 5/64, which is the same size as what you need for the set screws on your lightsaber. So it says saber size, which is convenient because I always know where those are. They're just never in my sewing room. They're with my lightsaber kit. How's our camera here? There we go, ish. So in addition to having 2 needles, there's a knife blade in there. You can't really get the details, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna run this through It's going to trim short the fabric, and then it's going to loop thread around the edges of it. I'm just going to do a partial one because I want to be able to show you the difference. Cool. All right. So the important thing, if you happen to have a setup like I do, where you have two sewing machines next to each other and you switch between them frequently, the sewing machines all have foot pedals, right? Make sure you move your feet when you move the rest of you. Because I can't tell you how often I've been sewing away over here with my foot on the sewing machine, and then I switch over here, and my fabric is all over here, and my foot is still on the sewing machine pedal, and I'm like, why won't it go? Where is the go? And then I'm like, the go's over here. Because I'm smart some days. It's super convenient. Like I said, having the two machines is great. I love it, and I love the fact that I've got them both set up side by side like that. I just have to remember. All right. So what did the serger do for us? It did these things. So you can see the red-orange thread of the seam. That's still there. That is not, I wanted that to stay, and it did. And the white, normally you match your thread, but again, demonstration. The white thread, some of it has sewn a seam. So here's my red seam. That's what I did with my sewing machine. Right here, that white seam is the serger sewed a seam, and then it went back and forth and it looped thread all the way around the machine, the edge. Did the same thing on the back here. Again, orange for my sewing machine seam, white for the loops. This is technically a tiny bit off kilter because this position should be right at the edge of the fabric. So I could go through and adjust my serger a tiny bit to make it a little bit better tuned. But now there's no raw empty edge. The raw edges are looped up in the thread, which means they won't fray. And to do that, so like I said, I yanked this out early here. You feed it through, and at first it cuts it. So first, it's always going to trim off, a certain amount. There's a mark. You can feed it as close or as tight as you want. But the way I fed it in here, it's always going to trim off. In this case, I got about 1/4 of an inch off-ish. Like so here. And you get this cut edge, and then it loops around and wraps the cut edge, sews that seam and wraps the cut edge here. Sorry, there we go. Like so. So then it's finished, and then you just go, and you do the whole thing. This is great. The serger is really reliable for doing this kind of thing. Sometimes it is full of demons, like I said, and you have to sacrifice some chickens or undergrads or whatever, whatever you're willing to sacrifice. Sometimes you gotta do that. Sometimes you just gotta rethread it. Sometimes it wins and you just walk away and come back tomorrow. But when they're functioning, which is most of the time, they're pretty great. They're great machines. I really love mine. Yeah. So the serger does that. This is really great for a really nice, durable seam, real sturdy. So as I said, all of the seams in this garment were serged. Now this, let's see here. You can admire my, whatever it is I have over there. So this is honestly probably my most fun cosplay that I have, that I've ever made or worn. And this is my Resistance X-Wing pilot from the Star Wars The Force Awakens. Like so, here. It's a pair of coveralls that zip up the front. They've got cuffs. They've got some cool details on the sleeves here. They've got extensive pockets. That's one of my favorite functions of them, is that they've got 7 different pockets. So for instance, and I keep these loaded because I do wash this, but it doesn't need to be washed that often because I always wear a base layer under it that's washable. Just like, back in historical eras, people would wear linen underdresses, chemise, shift, whatever you want to call it, depends on the era, and you'd wash that, and the heavily, decorated hand embroidered cloth of gold gowns that Queen Elizabeth is wearing, that doesn't get washed. You can't wash that, but you can wash the underdress. So same concept. So my pockets, for instance, I have a badge clip and I have fashion tape. And these just live in here forever. Over here I have a compact mirror so that I can check my lipstick, which is important. I have a keychain bottle opener in case it's that kind of day. Don't drink while you're flying, kids, but once you land, it's fair game. And then one of the other fun things that I have in my pocket, so these are all kind of, I mean, they're kind of cosplay details, honestly, is that I have my my trading cards in there. So hilariously enough, I just ran out, so give me a sec here. I have my trading cards. I'm pretty sure I made this offer before, just like real coveralls. Drop me a private message through Instagram or Facebook or wherever, and I will mail you trading cards if you want them. So these are my Victoria Gill is my pilot's name. Her call sign is Flask, and I got all these pictures in here and details. So those always live in my pockets. A couple other business cards. My Rouge Squadron challenge coin, which says, "We make this look good," and on the back it says, "Kiss your Death Star goodbye," with a sassy pinup X-wing pilot and the Death Star she's just blown up, which is great, and I love everything about this. So that lives in my pocket. Sometimes the details of a costume are just the things that make you really happy about it. So that's here. Where's my pocket? There we go. They all have specific pockets, but the edges of every part of this garment and every seam in it were serged before it was finalized, which makes it really washable. Even though I mostly don't bother because I wash the underlayer, the outer layer can get washed, and there are days when it needs it. So let's come over here to our detail camera and take a look. So here, there's a serged edge, and you can see, because it's tone on tone, it's harder to parse visually, but it also doesn't show super well. So it's pretty subtle. In this case, I serged the flat edge, the outside of the piece of fabric, and then I just folded it over and sewed that down once. So here, this stitch is just a standard machine stitch that was done after the edge was serged. And that was easier to do for all the pocket construction. And on the interior of the garment, so here's the inside, here we can see some seams that again were sewn together and then serged after the seam was constructed. Focus, there we go, yeah. So that way these seams are not gonna come apart. And like there's some bits of loose thread and stuff going on in here where I couldn't quite get the serger to cooperate because I was trying to go through this really heavy ruffled ridged elastic. So this elastic trim is really thick because it's not only is it elastic, it's like got this extra layers of elastic going technical term. So it's got that elastic on there. So this was really hard to sew. So there's a couple places where you get some raw edges, but not too many. So yeah, so the whole interior is serged. I should confess at this point that these costumes were built as part of a community build group. We had about 20, 25 people working on these pilots. So I didn't do every single piece of sewing on my outfit, but I did a lot of the design and construction work. And so some people were like, well, we'll sew pockets. And I was like, well, I'll design pockets. And we did it as a team collab. So I had help with this, but it still remains my very favorite outfit because it's surprisingly comfortable. And I'm not sure I've ever looked more badass as when I roll up in a fighter pilot jumpsuit in space. Like, mwah, it is amazing. Um, and it's also kind of fun because it doesn't carry quite the emotional weight that Captain Marvel does for me. Because I love Captain Marvel. I've had this tattoo since 2015 before there was any chance she was going to be in the MCU. Um, and so whenever I suit up as Carol, it's just this sort of like, I get to be Carol. And oh, if you go back and look at con photos of me as Captain Marvel, or you look at photos from public events, if you look, you can usually see the tears I'm fighting back, honestly. Like, not always. And sometimes I can get more into character. But when I'm walking down the street in the parade and someone goes, Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel, and I just kind of have to go, people know her. And I care so much. And so it's hard sometimes to just enjoy it because it's just so emotionally resonant for me. And like, I love Star Wars, but when I get to put on my flight suit, it's not the same kind of thing. It's just this feeling of like, yeah, Air Force, baby, fighter pilots, the right stuff, John Glenn and Alan Shepard, and, you know, John Young, who got to fly the space shuttle for the first time. And it's harkening back to Amelia Earhart and everything. And it's just, Dr. Sally Ride, who, if you didn't know, see, this I do care about. The first American woman in space was a lesbian. She and her partner kept that very on the down low because they were big activists for women in STEM, and they kind of figured out that it was the 90s, it was the 80s, and maybe they couldn't be as open about it as they might have wanted. And so, but to get to tie into that tradition of astronauts and fighter pilots for me is just fun. And I love it so much. And so this does that for me, and it's much more about like, damn right, I've got the right stuff. And it's emotional in a different way for me. So this is just fun. Um, yeah. So I digress. But there's no one. The problem is there's no one here to keep me on topic. So I digress a little bit. Um, so the X-Wing flight suits were surged. The whole build group surged all of our flight suits, and yeah, it was really fun. And now we have a whole bunch of them. Like, not everyone still wears theirs, and not everyone finished them, but most of them. Oh, you didn't know that about Sally Ride? Yeah, yeah, it's wonderful. That's why. Um, so this is technically not Star Wars anymore, but you can just kind of see there's text on the bottom of my trading card. Um, and it's describing my character, right? So it's got my name, it's got how to find me, my social contact, and then it says Flask, that's my call sign. Flask has the grit of Amelia Earhart, the savvy of Jerry Cobb, and the persistence of Sally Ride. Jerry Cobb was one of what they now call the Mercury 13, the women who qualified to become astronauts but were not permitted to because misogyny in the 1960s, um, 50s and 60s. She'll fly loops around the rest of the squadron in her T-70 X-Wing and touch up her winged eyeliner just before landing. Ignite the spark. Um, Amelia Earhart had to carry a mirror and lips. Amelia hated makeup, but she knew if she was going to be a woman aviator in the 1920s, she had to present femininity in a way that would let her get away with being a pilot. And so she would carry a mirror and she would touch up her lipstick before she landed every time. Um, and she hated it, but I kind of wanted to take that and make it my own. Um, so whenever I do this pilot, it is high femme makeup. It is winged eyeliner with precision. It is a smoky eye. It is something um where it's like, yeah, yeah, I'm, playing with the boys, as the Top Gun soundtrack puts it, but I'm not going to let you forget that I'm a girl while I'm doing it. I put perhaps too much thought into these things. I am aware of that about myself. So there's your other detail, is like, if you know, particularly if it's an original character kind of design, if you know things about your character, you'll have more fun doing it, portraying it, being it, whatever. This goes in this pocket. I also kind of like, honestly, these pockets are kind of like my lab coat pockets in that they have this sort of permanent loadout. All right. So serging is great. What if you don't have a serger, or you don't, or you want to make sure that your seams are really, 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 really durable? The other option is what we call, or is what is called, a French seam. And the French seam is what I put on all of my Saber Guild costumes. Cease to tangle, please and thank you. There we go. All right. So this is a portion of my Saber Guild Sith costume here. So it also, there's a belt that goes over it. There's some other layers and stuff, but this was the part that I wanted to bring out and show off. So we've got a tunic and a vest overlay tabard that goes with it. Saber Guild, we dress up like Star Wars characters, and we do choreographed lightsaber duels. So we chase each other around with glow sticks, and we hit each other's glow sticks. We try not to hit each other, but we do sword fights. It's great. It's the most fun I've ever had. It's fun, it's challenging, it's exhausting, it's a great workout, it's just everything. We sweat a lot, and no base wicking layer will save you. So I knew that all of these kind of costumes needed to be machine washable. A lot machine washable. Like, they need to go in the machine and just wash them, dry them, iron them when they're done. So I deliberately chose a construction method that I knew would stand up. And material. They're all made of linen or cotton. But I think, yeah, all my tunics are either linen or a linen rayon blend, because linen is really durable and it's very machine washable. So we'll take that off the hanger. The seams in here are not serged. They are, as I said, what we call a French seam here. That's the inside seam of the garment here. There's the insides of my snaps, inside darts. This is the interior, but there's no raw edges. It's a finished folded seam edge. I have done them again. The tone on tone is great, except for one new demonstration, but I'm gonna actually do one in a minute here. So you can just barely see that stitching line. And then this seam, there's a folded over seam edge on the edge of the interior. On the exterior, so if I grab this, flip it over, it just looks like a normal seam. Like, there's clearly a seam, it's not hidden, but it's just a seam, just a normal seam. But rather than have raw edges, the edges are folded inside, they're trapped. And that is a French seam. So the way you make a French seam, I actually have this written down next to right in front of my sewing machine. So there's the sewing machine. I wrote it down so I would never forget exactly how to do it. So, and the key thing here, wrong sides together. French seams are really cool. So let me just, we'll point you in random directions for a sec here, while I get this rig set up to demonstrate. So I've got a couple scrap pieces of paper or fabric. They happened to be Star Wars fabric because I'm me, but they could, whatever. So we have the right sides, which are the sides that have the print really nice and bright and readable. They're the sides you want on the outside of the garment. Then we have the wrong sides, where it's all gray and faded out and the words are backwards and stuff like that. Normally, when you sew a seam, you always you put the right sides together. So you'd put your right sides together, you sew your seam. When you flip it inside out, now both of the right sides are out, facing you, and there's your seam. Then you can serge that seam or do whatever. But we're doing a French seam. We're going to turn things inside out and protect these things. So we're going to do this wrong sides together. So the back sides with the right sides, the brightly colored sides facing out. And it's weird and I hate it. And that's why I had specifically do French seams make croissants? No, they should. Now I'm also hungry. So we're going to do this wrong sides together, and that's weird, and I have to write it down to remind myself every time. Then you're going to sew with a really narrow seam allowance. So normally, let's make sure I didn't unthread it or anything, just going around earlier. So normally when you sew with the sewing machine, you use about a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So that's going to be this mark over here. And there's my needle. This is way close. The edge of the fabric is way closer in. 3/8, 1/8. It's at that 1/4 seam allowance, 1/4 inch seam allowance. So weird, but necessary for what we're doing here. Normally I do pin my seams, but this is just demonstration, so I'm not. But I'm not a no pin sewer when it matters. So you pin those. You sew that seam. Now you're going to trim it down to like 1/8 of an inch or so. You don't want to trim it, you don't want to cut off your seam, and you want to leave enough fabric that the seam can still grip it. So down to about 1/8 of an inch. It's real tight. You wouldn't want to sew quite that tight. Now you're going to flip it. Now, normally I would go and press it, but I'm not bothering. But you'd go and press it, flip it. And now what I've done, so I'm going to fold it. So here's that raw seam I just sewed. I'm going to put that right there at the edge. Then I'm going to sew again, right across the middle of Ray's face. Not quite. But so now here's my raw edge, my raw cut off fabric edge. And I'm going to wrap the fabric around it and trap it. And again, normally you would press this to make sure that it stays flat and does what you want it to do. Then you're going to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm only going to sew part of this so that I can sort of, kind of still take it apart and show you. So if you sew a 2/8, 1/4 inch is 2/8. If you sew a 2/8 seam and then a 3/8 seam, you've sewn your normal 5/8 inch seam. You've just sewn it twice. So here's the seam I've just sewn right across Ray's forehead. Zip. Zip. On the wrong sides. Now on the right side, there's no raw edge here. And here where I stopped, you can see, kind of, there you go. You can see what's going on. That I've got that raw edge that's getting trapped. So there's the raw edge, but it's trapped underneath the seam. It's vanishing underneath the edge here. And if I keep going, we're doing that. We're just pinching, we're just hiding that raw edge. Zoop, like so. Zoop. That is a French seam. So that here, it looks like a seam where instead of having raw edges, it's got this connected sort of flappy bit. And then on the outside, it looks like a regular seam. Now there's no way this can fray because it's completely protected. So like I said, all my Saber Guild costumes are sewn that way. It does, so this is the sleeve of my Saber Guild, my Sith tunic. And it does leave sort of the one problem. It's not a problem, it's just a thing. The thing that happens is that at the hem, you've got that little flappy bit. And for most cases, it's on the inside and you'll never see it. Here, this is the end where my hand comes out. We'll do this backwards, but there's my hand, my arm. And so you can sometimes kind of notice that, the little flippy bit, but nobody really cares, honestly. Like, it's not a problem. It's just there. And it's on the bottom of the sleeve. It's the underarm seam, so like whatever, nobody cares. But it is there. But so now this, I haven't had a chance to wear this to an event yet because I just finished it. 2020 was the year that made me fall to the dark side. I have always been a light sider. I've always been a Jedi. When I started joining Saber Guild, I was like, I am going to be a Jedi Knight. I don't want to be a dark sider. I don't want to be a Sith. But it does kind of matter, sometimes it's convenient to be able, in a theater troupe that does a lot of improv and a lot of quick last minute things, it's convenient to be able to swap between light side and dark side. But really, it's just that 2020 was the year that made me fall to the dark side. So I got it finished in that year. But I haven't had a chance to wear it out yet. Although I did a fun little video piece for a local convention costume contest. And I got Best Media Recreation for that, which was fun. So I filmed a little piece with both my Jedi and Sith costumes. Yeah, 2020 was rough. Yeah. So, but 2021 has been better so far, if not quite, if not normal, it's been better, and in some cases a better normal towards a better future. So, I have more Jedi ideas. I have lots more plans in the future. So that's how I finish my, let's see, is that my list of seams that need finishing? Or ways to finish seams? It is. There's other things. If you look at if you're wearing jeans, the way seams are finished on jeans is usually a little different from either a French seam or a serged seam. But I've never actually done flat felled seams, so I don't really feel qualified to talk about those. But they exist. There's other methods. But these are the methods I use: serging, or zigzagging before I had a serger, or French seams. Or you can put in a lining in the garment, which completely hides all the raw seams. So if I slip my jacket off, I didn't make this, it's just a tank top. If I slip my jacket off, there's no raw seams in it because I made a lining. So of course it's all black on black, and so you can't see it. But you can kind of see the seams there. I didn't have to finish these seams because they're all, again, on the inside, hidden by the fabric. So there's, they might rub against each other a little bit, but not much, not really. So the lining hides your seams, which is convenient for that. So that's another way to prevent having raw seams showing. And this skirt is French seamed, I believe. Yes. No, these edges are serged seams. I sometimes have to check on my clothing. What did I do on this one? These are French serged seams, which is nice. So, let's see, 8:14. So the other things I wanted to talk about were fabric decorating, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do fabric painting first, partly because, spoiler alert, I was told somebody, my charming moderator Prime had a question about this. And it seemed like a good thing to talk about. So if you want to design on fabric, and it also ties into the Padme project, if you want to design on fabric, you can sculpt it if you really want. You can embroider it, or you can paint it. More on embroidery later, because I want to make sure I cover painting. So these 34s here on Lady Danger's shoulder plates are, she's made out of metal, and so they're painted on her shoulders. And I knew that was how I was going to capture that. So we'll just slip that off. You can see a fully lined interior. So again, no raw seams because it's all lined. And the front lining is sort of that nice silver, to, again, sort of pick up all these metallic machinery colors. So I got a stencil. I think I honestly went to the craft store and just got a number stencil. And I just painted it on with a brush. I think this is brushed on. I honestly can't tell, and it's been a while. But it's just opaque white fabric paint. Um, and what I usually use for paint, if we go through my drawer labeled paint, is just acrylic paint. So this is folk art acrylic. It will say on it, let's see, decorative crafts and home decor, use on all porous surfaces, water-based, non-toxic. Acrylic paint, I got 2 jugs of that. This one is a different brand. It says Crafters Acrylic. General arts and crafts, stenciling, ceramics, school projects, craft surfaces. This is technically not fabric paint, but acrylic paint works great on fabric. I use it a lot. So use it with a brush, stencil it, stamp it, brush it on, sponge it on, however you want to get it on there. Let it dry, obviously. And then fabric paint, you usually want to go ahead and heat set, which I usually just hit it with an iron. If your clothing is washable, you can throw it in the dryer. Just throw it in the dryer on high heat and just let it dryer. Like, you don't wash it. Just take the painted dried garment and just put it in the dryer. But I like the fabric, the iron for setting it in place. And like, this is not, it's silk. This isn't washable. So I just heat set it. If you're never gonna wash it, it's maybe less critical. But heat set it anyway. Now you can use, just gonna go through what, God knows what I have in here. That's different. I also have some model paints, like Warhammer 40K miniature paint, which works for that too. Now you can also use fabric paints, right? And this is probably what you remember if you ever did t-shirts as a kid, where it comes with a little nozzle and then you squeeze out the lines or whatever. So this is says dimensional. This is 3D. So this is the kind where you draw on your t-shirt and it gives you a little upraised bead of paint. If you want that effect, you should use it. So 3D fabric paint. If you don't want that effect, don't do that. You can probably still like squeeze it out and then brush it on there and it won't be quite as 3D, but you know, whatever. So yeah, so you can use fabric paint or you can just use acrylic paint. Either's fine. Either way, you need to heat set it. This will have usually instructions, dry flat 4 hours, fabric can be washed, whatever. You can paint on all types of fabric. Yeah. Paint will stiffen the fabric a little bit because it's an extra layer of stuff of approximately plastic on top of it. So, if you've got a really lightweight drapey fabric, you probably want to look for paint that's meant for that. So like a chiffon, we're going to get there in a sec. But like, if I come back to my Lady Danger jacket here, Forest of Paints. If I come back to the Lady Danger jacket, you know, it is a little, you can see it is a little stiffer where the numbers are. It doesn't curve, it'll you know, sort of creases there. It doesn't curve as nicely. It curves around that. I didn't care because it's a flat structural part of the garment. Like, you know, it's supposed to be a flat plate on her shoulder kind of a thing. So that didn't bother me. And if you're painting, so I heard a rumor of decorated coveralls, which are already kind of stiff, right? So go ahead and just, you know, use whatever paint, use acrylic paint. Now, if you wanted something that has a little more lightness to it, you probably want a different kind of fabric paint. Mannequin quick change. Do, 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 do. Ta-da! I'm just gonna cut to the full screen here. This is my Katniss Everdeen Mockingjay gown that I did quite a while ago. The thing was in what, I don't know, 2014, 13, somewhere in that range. This is from the second movie, Hunger Games Catching Fire. This is the gown that she wears. It's the second gown that she wears on her big TV interview, right? Where she comes out in the wedding gown she cannot wear now because she has to go into the games instead. And then it burns away and catches fire, and she's wearing a gown under it that looks like it's got feathers all over it. And then she, does the big thing with the wings, and it's very dramatic and everything. So this is that Mockingjay gown. It's my version of it. And it's a little bit of a inspired by. It's not quite perfect because I didn't have this exact same techniques they used. They printed their feather design on fabric. I painted this. This is everything you see is hand painted. What I started with was white chiffon. I ombre dyed it, so it's a dark blue down at the hem. You can see the dark blue color here, up to a very light gray, and then all of this was hand painted over that. Using jacquard fabric paints that are more like dyes. People are crap posting in the chat. I am not engaging with that. You can carry on being weird in the chat without me. So we talked about dyes already. And this is dye, but made into a paint medium, basically, so that you can treat it like a paint. You can brush it on and paint it, but the pigment that's coloring the fabric is a fabric dye rather than a paint. So it binds to the fabric in a slightly different way. And that means there's no texture. I can't let you run your hands over it from home, it turns out. Shocking, I know. But if I bring this over here, there's no texture difference. Like you can see, everything you're seeing here is a color difference, is a color change. If I stick my hand up underneath the because it's a silk undergown in sort of a dove steel gray, and then this drops over it. So this is, because this is very sheer, it needed an underlayer. You can kind of see my hand under it. But there's no change in the texture. This runs and moves and flows just like it's silk. There's the paint. You can see the color effect of the paint, but it doesn't change the texture at all. You can kind of see the texture of my hand a little bit better up here. The texture is exactly the same. So this was special paint. But if you're stenciling, if I were doing like a Bitch Planet costume and I wanted to put those big NC non-compliant letters on it, I would just use acrylic on a jumpsuit because that's meant to be really stiff and durable. And nobody cares about texture on a prisoner jumpsuit. But for this gown here, where I was looking for something very, very light, I used a different material. I also, you can kind of tell what's going on here a little bit. You've got all these lines that are lighter. Those were done with a resist. So you paint something down on the fabric that protects it from paint. It's a gummy kind of a thing. You let that dry, then you brush your paint past it, and it will run up to the resist, but not past it. So you can get these nice where they block it. Or like here, you can see these different color shapes. So I did the triangle outline in the resist and then came through with a teal and filled it in a little bit and kind of, brushed a little bit. And that helped me get this sort of feather-like detail. And I was copying it based on the references. Her dress was actually photos of feathers printed on the silk, but I didn't have that capability. So I did that, and it's all hand done. And then down here, as we got down towards the hem, I got away from that detail and kind of went big splashy bits and treated it more like a watercolor, where you get the fabric wet and you put the dye on and kind of let it run out and do whatever it's going to do. And you can see the color sort of gradation here, like so. I did it a little bit differently since I have you here. I did it differently on the back of the gown, where you can see sort of these stripy bits here. And again, some of these have had resist on them. Some of them are a bunch of different colors, like so. And these big stripes, again, copying the patterns of what I could see on the film gown. You can also see a very interesting construction detail. So there's a zipper that holds the dress on, and then there's these big old chunky zippers. I'm like, this is a separating jacket zipper, and these big old chunky snaps, because these are the supports for the wings. I can't get to the wings right now. Maybe I'll pull them out for the next stream, or maybe I'll end up doing, once I finish going through the Padme project, maybe I'll do additional streams. But these are the wings zip onto the gown, snap in place, and then I can reach back and lift them up and extend them out. They're real feathers. It's a pretty fun effect. So yeah. So that's some fabric paint technique. And then the other one, speaking of how this is ostensibly a case study of a particular outfit, I should, like, I don't know, maybe talk about that outfit. Sounds fake, but okay. Here's my costume storage bin. We're going to get more into this for next time, which is the next time is the Get Ready with Senator Amidala, which will be super fun. But fabric paint, I talked about the piping a little bit last time, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about the paint details here. What do you use for resist? So I shop everything for my fabric color is from Dharma Trading Company, and they have specifically a water-based resist. You can use something called Gutta Percha, which is latex-based and a little harder to deal with. It's harder to remove, and it smells worse, and it's a little less environmentally and health friendly. So I use a purpose-made water-based resist. That's Dharma, Dharma Trading Company. That's where I get all of my fabric colors, like all of my dyes and my dye paints and everything are from them. And almost all of my white fabric. If I buy fabric that's white, I have almost certainly purchased it from Dharma Trading Company. There are like a couple examples that where Dharma doesn't quite carry what I need, but most of it they do. So here is the stencil detail. So the back of Amidala's cape is covered with these very particular shapes. They're kind of weird Fs. Like, I guess that's kind of what I've been thinking of them as, like, weird Fs. They're not really a fleur-de-lis, but they're like vaguely akin to a fleur-de-lis. Those little French flower things that you see in like New Orleans or France or wherever, but not really. It's a thing. But anyway, it's clearly this shape. And it's covered in it. The whole thing is the back is all covered in it. I believe I have in fact worn this on stream before. The back is all covered in it, and then the front has this. Then there's a trim around the edge. So the trim goes around, and then there we go, like so. I love this. It is the coziest of capes, and very comfy and very soft. So if you look at the pictures, if you look at the reference pictures, which is always, always go back to the reference pictures if you're duplicating something, it's very clear that these were stamped on. They were not brushed or hand painted on there. They were stamped, because you can kind of see the unevenness of the color, the way it took. Like, there's only one way to get it to do that, and that's just like a stamp, like a rubber stamp. And so I was like, welp, gotta do that. So the process of doing that, I mixed up, it's actually a custom mixed color. So I mixed up the color and, you know, poured it out on a pan, got a little stamp and just stamped it on there. Let's see. I'm pretty sure I saved the stamps, but I'm not 100% sure if I know where I put them. So we're going to do a quick rummage through the drawer most likely to contain them. Unless they're in this drawer here. Or this one. It was several kinds of a day today, so I am slightly less prepared for stream than I intended to be. And that appears to include being able to find my stamps. They exist. I definitely didn't throw them away. So what I did, I'm pretty proud of this, is I grabbed some nice screenshots and I put them on my tablet, and I've got an art program I really like that works with my stylus to trace the outlines of these shapes. Specifically, like I pulled up her garment, I sized the picture so that, you know, her wrist in the picture, you know, looking at my wrist in real life, and I'm like, okay, well, if the thing and the stamps are roughly the width of her wrist, but not quite. So I looked at, you know, her wrist versus my wrist versus, you know, the size of these to her versus to me, and figured out the size. And then I upload it to my Cricut. I have a Cricut maker, which is basically a computer-controlled X-Acto blade. So it's a CNC knife, and so you give it an image, and it goes, and it cuts the image out for you. And it's great, and I love it to pieces, and people have done some amazing stuff with theirs. So what I did is I had it cut this shape, and I did it. They actually come in two forms, right? You can kind of see this. They're mirror images. They've got a left and a right. They've got a left and a right enantiomer for those zero or view that are chemistry majors like me. The organic chemists will know they're mirror images. They're left and right mirror images. And so I cut them out like that, and I cut them out of craft foam, and I did, I think, two or three of each shape so that I could glue them together, because craft foam's not that thick. And the maker, the one I have is the biggest, sort of heaviest duty one they have or had at the time, but it still won't cut like thick foam. So I did like two or three cutouts and then glued them together to make a stamp. And then I glued some random scrap on there to make a handle so I could actually hold on to it. And like, if I'd really wanted to, I probably could have like gotten a flat brick, you know, block handle like they use for when you're making cards with rubber stamps or whatever. You know, stamping is a whole craft thing. But I just sort of improvised a handle so that I could see the shape. Then you dip it in the fabric paint, dip. And I worked out, this is, as demonstrated, a lot of fabric to cover. And there's only so much room on my craft table. So I kind of laid out and managed to figure out, if I mix this much paint, that covers as much as I can do before I have to move the fabric. So I'd stamp out, let it dry completely, you know, overnight, come back the next day, move it, stamp the fresh bit, move it. So it took a while to do that just because it had to dry. You know, if I'd had a big work table like they do, you know, in Hollywood, and if I'd been able to just lay everything out and leave it, then I would have done that. And it would have been faster. But I have the space I have. So stamping and stenciling, again, it's just acrylic. This is, this I actually had some fun with. It is, which one did I mix them with? Where'd it go? Did I use you up? Nope, that's glue. There it is. So this is a custom color mix of the Folk Art Gray. And I had some glow-in-the-dark fabric paint, which is white-ish. And so I mixed those because, one, I wanted to use this up, and it actually came out a really nice color. So
It's they don't glow in the dark by themselves, but if you hit it with a UV flashlight, which I have because Science Zone, if you hit it with a UV flashlight, they will actually glow just a teeny tiny bit, um, for no reason other than I had the glow paint and wanted to use it up. I didn't have any other white. When I realized this was a little too dark, I didn't have any other white that I could really use. I had glitter white, which seemed bad, and I had glow white, which seemed better. And I didn't want to go buy it, so I just did that. And I am really very pleased with it. So these came out really nice. Yeah. So you can paint fabric. You can, yeah, so you can paint it. And the other way that you can add finish, which we see in a lot of Queen Amidala and Senator Amidala's costumes, is that you can embroider it. And embroidery is not one of my skill sets. But there is a lot, it turns out, of artistic talent in my family. So this was a Christmas gift from my mother. She made me a steampunk trench coat, with these it's this great trench coat pattern, also very kind of 40s-ish feeling, buttons down the front. And then she was sort of like, but what if gadgets and trinkets and stuff? And so this is just sort of like, this is a weird, fun thing, right? Because it's steampunk, right? There's no such thing as historical accuracy with steampunk. But she did, and again, this is not my skill set. That's all embroidery. There's one metal gear in the center here. Yeah, and everything else about this Art Deco winged eagle, not quite piece here is all embroidery. So she just took thread and stitched it on there, which, like, dang. I consult, like, I knew she was gonna make me a try, like, we consulted. She's like, well, I want to, do something fun for you, and so we talked about it. And I was like, well, trench coat sounds fun, and we talked about the pattern and the fabric and stuff. But she just kind of went to town on this, and I was amazed. So you can embroider things if you want that kind of finishing detail. You can embroider the fabric. The tedious thing about embroidery is you have to do it while you're making the garment. Like, you can't do it after the fact, because then the lining has to go on. So it's not, you can't sew, it's not embroidered through the lining. This is separate. So she embroidered the fabric and then sewed the embroidered fabric into the coat. It's got this whole big, like, a back vent and everything, and it's magnificent. Like, cuffs have matching embroidery on it here. So I don't have advice on doing embroidery because I don't. Like, I tried some as a little kid and just it never quite clicked for me. Like, I could do it, but it was, it looked like a little kid and embroidered it because I had, and it never quite became something I enjoyed or wanted to do more of. I have some friends who are working on hand embroidering some of Princess Leia's costumes that have hand embroidery on them, and I was just sort of like, may the force be with you, my friends. That is not my fun. That is not my project. But I do more fabric dye than they do, so everybody finds their joy in whatever things. So, but embroidery is one option, and really, I just wanted a chance to show off this jacket, which I should really wear more often. I do not wear it that often. I haven't done steampunk in a while. Let's see, and then the other finishing piece that is relevant to this costume is beading. And for that, I gotta put the cape aside and find it in the other garment pieces. And we talked, what are you, oh God, you're the shirt. No. We talked a little bit about this last month, but not a ton. So when you put beading on a fabric, you got to sew them on somehow to the fabric. Do some research into beading, or talk to your jeweler friends if you happen to have them, because they will have tools and advice and tips that you might not know if you're coming at this as a sewist, which is what I am doing here. So part of it for me is just a question of like, I go to Adrian from Optimistical Studios, who come to con all the time and are great people. I'm like, Adrian, how do I do the thing? And he's like, here's how you do the thing. Or Adrian, I need these beads. What are they called? And he's like, well, they're called like M&Ms or like coin beads or whatever, because they are honestly shaped like little M&Ms. And like these black ones are seed beads. And I'm like, great, can you buy them for me? I will pay them back, obviously. But like, they've got sources and connections. But the biggest tip for beading is get the special beading needles. Do not do it with your sewing needles. It will not work as well. You will swear more if you use your sewing needles. The beading needles are specifically flat and they're smooth all the way through, like they're the same width, so that you can get them through the really tight beads, as opposed to a sewing needle, which tends to be a little wider at the top where the eye is and narrower towards the tip, which is good for fabric, trickier for beads. So get your special beading needles, and then you want to go through, and then when you get to the bead at the bottom, loop around it. Second camera time. Another friend mentioned this, and I was like, well, I wish I'd known that before. This is on one of my other gowns. I wish I'd known that. Like the costume judge mentioned it to me at Masquerade judging. Oh, you should do this trick. And I went, I wish I'd known that before, but I used it on this one. So you get to the bottom end, and you don't want the bead to fall off. You don't want everything to go flying. So you get down here to the end, and you could tie a big knot, which is what I did the first time. But like, that's a pretty big hole relative to how much of a knot you would need to tie. Like, that is a big knot that you need to tie around that. So instead, what you do, let's see if I can get it to show up on here at all. There we go. It's a loop, see? You go down, nope, yes. You go down, you thread all your beads on it, you loop around the bottom black bead, then you go back up and you go back through all your beads again. Then it can't fall off. So there's a loop, so this is at the bottom catching it, and then everything can slide down, but it can't slide off. So that's my trick that I've learned for like beaded tassels and stuff like this. Pick it up. And then all of these are sewn through the fabric. So I had to get like a regular thread needle and punch it through the fabric to sew it, which then vanishes up. If you look in there, you can see the bottom of there's a cartridge pleating somewhere under there. There they are. You can just barely kind of see all that black that's way down in there. Maybe kind of, sort of. There we go. That's the back ends of all these threads. So it's buried way in there, which makes it like it's harder to pull through or pull out, but it's not so hidden that if I ever yank one of these out, I can thread up a new one or recover the old beads and rethread it, and I can sew it in there. So it's protected, but not 100% permanently sealed away forever, just in case I need to go back in and readjust it. Yeah, so. But it's pretty well hidden, and you've got all your finishes. And that last time we talked about how there's this muslin facing to protect the skirt and keep it from stretching, and all these decorative pieces and all that jazz. Yeah, so that's how that is put together. Again, talk to your jeweler friends if you have them. The one catch about this is it now makes it a little harder to wash, because I don't want these to like smack against the side of the washing machine. So what I'm going to do when I have to wash the skirt is flip it inside out and put it in one of those delicates bags. I've got a real big one that should fit most of these things, just so that the loose glass beads aren't slamming into the washer and agitator. And I still want to be able to machine wash it because I'm going to sweat. And this part of the purposes of making this particular soft t-shirt fabric upon my outfit is so that I can go hug little kids. And when you hug little kids, sometimes they get you all sticky and you have to wash your clothes. Um, Also, I'm hoping someday to be able to wear this to visit kids like in hospital and stuff like that. And they usually ask to make sure your costumes are freshly cleaned before that, because of course you don't want to be tracking in germs and dirt and dust to kids who are pretty sick. Um, Someday that may happen again. I don't know. Maybe it'll just all be video visits and we'll just wave from outside their windows. I don't know. But I wanted the option of a machine washable Padme costume. Um, Also, hopefully for Seattle Pride, in years when the Pride Parade happens, the Star Wars Washington groups have traditionally been able to march in the Pride Parade, um, and we get a bunch of you know, typically we try and let the face characters, Luke, Leia, Padme, be played by queer people, because you know that's what Pride is for. Pride is for us. Um, Although we have all our allies show up too, and it's stupid amounts of fun, and we let everyone come, and it's great. But you know, being able to be Padme for Pride is something that I'm really looking forward to, because people love it when they see Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia wearing Pride flag colors, because that's, you know, that's us. Everyone has a place in the stars. So I actually have the other trading card. One of the other trading card sets I have is my Amidala with the rainbows added. That's of course the lake gown, not this one here because this one isn't done yet. But I added some of the pride flags, and I added my my rainbow flower by pride flower crown and stuff. Because representation is hope. So yeah, that was really sort of a fun thing to do. So I'm looking forward to being able to wear this to Pride and being able to machine wash it when I'm done sweating myself to death. Was the short version of that story. That's almost everything. Folks have, I've got one more thing I can show, but before I do that, do folks have any other questions or anything I missed or anything else you want to talk about? Since we've got a few more minutes, I will consult the chat. Um, yeah. Um, Decorating, you know, details, is fun, and it's sometimes the most tedious part. Like, if I didn't French seam my costumes, they'd get done in about half. Well, the seams would be done in half the time anyway. Um, because the seams, you know, if you just go once, boom, done. But if you're then gonna over sew with the serger, if you're gonna French seam them and flip them inside out, that takes longer. But then your garment is sturdier and lasts longer. So like a lot of the seams on that Padme that I'm gonna machine wash are serged. I just didn't flip them and show you, but most of them are serged. Yeah, but it's also the worst. I can't remember if I've mentioned this. I think I did mention it a little bit earlier. So I am working on a jacket inspired by Hamilton, the Broadway stage show. It's actually, the pattern was made by the person who designed the costumes for the show. And they sold the pattern as a fundraiser for the costume industry since it's been shut down since March 2020. And some of the things that are happening on that jacket are the worst. So these pieces here, and it's going to be hard to see because it's ivory tone on tone because everything is like that. So these are the sleeves, part of the sleeves, like so. And on the forearms is this detail, which I had to hand make. I had to hand make all of the fabric trim that needed to be folded and sewn in a certain way, and then sew down, and it's zigzags back and forth, and it was exhausting. And I had to do it on both sleeves. And I have to do this now while there's still pieces of loose fabric versus, being part of the finished garment. Because when they're in the finished garment, it's going to have a lining. There's no way I could put that on there while the garment is wearable. I got to do it now, but oh my God. It's been the worst. But I got that done. Let's see, what else did I do? I also had to, we'll just grab the whole fistful. I also had to hand make all of the piping. So this double cord piping is going to run like around the collar and down the lapel and everything. And it's stunningly gorgeous. And I had to make all of that. I had to cut the fabric and insert 2 different layers of, you can kind of see it on the edges here, of this white yarn cording. Like it's a cotton yarn cord. And I had to insert that and sew it and then it also, so that I'm going to put in when I put the garment together. And then I also had to make this tubing, which looks very simple, but was, oh my God, which I'm then going to sew on following this template that I made in the shape of a feather. So this is going to go around, and get sewn down and do this sort of shape. And we'll see. I may need to make some adjustments to get it to, do the curves and bends and everything. But that's the plan. And there's a lot of tiers involved, and hopefully I'll have it done later this summer. Let's see. This is the mock-up for that jacket, which again, I think I had shown y'all before. But since I was wearing a bolero jacket earlier, we'll just slide this one back on. Mock-ups are, as always, truly hideous, so don't judge that based on, the fact that it's, raw edges and weirdly finished seams. But it's going to have a standing collar. The lapels are going to pop like so. So sleeve details. This one you can see has a little decorative sleeve poof, which will be on both sleeves. I just didn't bother. This is where that Christmas tree zigzag detail is going to be here. And then it sort of does that. It's got this really nice high-backed arch through here, which is really pretty. You can kind of, it's harder to tell, of course, with the white tank top on. I should have, I don't know. I should have thought of that, but I didn't. But I'm really pleased with the shape of the mock-up, and I'm really excited for what this is gonna look like eventually in 30 goddamn years when I get it done. There was another detail piece, and did I move him? I cleaned up all my patterns. I was like, I'm just going to shove these things over here out of the way. There they are. The other detail pieces are the sleeves, which have back like so. These are sort of petals kind of thing that I had to hand make. And they're gonna go on like that, roughly. Like, so they fit, but they have these really pretty petal sleeve details. So red, orange, yellow, and they'll be obviously sewn on there, but my hands only do so much. And then the other sleeve is going to be the other half of the rainbow. But like, meh. Something like that, which is going to be really cool. And I'm very excited about it. But man, it has been tedious. So sometimes the moral of couture finishes is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because I'm not. Yeah. So they do kind of, so they're gonna complement this, and like this is the real fabric, and so they sort of go along with it. The original instructions were for these to also be tone on tone, to be the same ivory, but I kind of wanted to do, and for science track reasons, because my science friends are delightful weirdos and I love them to pieces, I wanted to pull in sort of a rainbow color scheme as opposed to just doing white on white on white on white on white. Ivory, technically, it's not white, it's ivory. But still, so a lot of it's tone on tone, but we're gonna have those pops of color across the sleeves, and that'll be really fun. So there will be pictures when I get them done, and who knows, maybe I'll come back and do another special guest stream once I have that done. So yeah. Let's see. Demos, demo this, demo that. Yeah. Oh, blind hemming. We've got 4-ish minutes. There's a really cool thing that is buried under the pile of costume. We'll go ahead. I suppose another advantage of wearing a stripped down base piece is that I can just try everything on over the tank top and just show you everything. Dun, 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 dun. So there is another underlayer that I normally wear with this tunic. We want to see them all. Yes, I will happily show you all of my costume pieces. You know, given enough time. So again, normally I wear, there's other layers and I don't wear a brightly colored, I do wear no, this might wear pants with. Most of my Jedi all wear skirts, but this particular Sith is a pants wearing Sith. Ta-da, very serious business. So this outfit, the under tunic, or the tunic is linen, and it's washable, it's real comfy. I love this one here. The vest is made out of wool. It's a scrap wool that I've had in my stash for forever. Wow. See, now the makeup absolutely clashes terribly. We'll just pretend. And so the wool needed to be finished, so you didn't have a raw edge flapping around. Like, you want a nice folded over finished looking edge here. But it had to go all the way around the vest and all the way down and around. And that's a lot of work. And I could have hand sewn it. And I thought about it. But a sewing machine, and again, probably you don't even need a fancy sewing machine to have this capability, but it probably has what's called a blind hem stitch. And the vest needs to come off so I can get you the details on it. Like so. So what happens here is that I serged in black the edge of the fabric just to make sure it wouldn't fray or run away. The wool doesn't usually fray, but just to be sure. And then let's just change the color balance dramatically, because that sounds like a good plan. See that lighter colored line of stitching right up above here? That's what we call blind hemming. And a blind hem is a machine stitch that does this weird kind of a weird zigzag pattern, is the short version. Weird zigzag that just barely catches the other side of the fabric. So on the outside, you can't see it. Like, you can just barely see like a texture. It's not even like a texture difference. You can kind of tell that the fabric's been pulled down a little bit, but not really. Not so as you'd notice from anywhere further away than a couple inches. And so I just folded this up and put the machine in. There's a trick to it, and went and let the sewing machine do the stuff, which was great. So I was able to machine hem this in such a way that you don't have a line of stitching. Like, if you know to look for it, you can kind of tell that there's something there, but there's no seam line. There's no visible stitching. And so a blind hem is a really nice technique for that with the sewing machine. There were a couple places where I did have to go through and hand tweak it to make sure it caught, but for the most part, it saved me so much time and effort. You can use this on any kind of hem. It works best with thicker fabrics. Like, I wouldn't really do it on like a chiffon, this sort of thing that's really drapey. Um, the way you hem a chiffon is you serge the edge of it, or zigzag overlock. Just run that through the serger or whatever. Um, like I said, this was zigzag because this was before I bought my serger. I didn't buy my serger until Galadriel, which we saw in our first stream. Um, so yeah. Um, yeah, blind hems. It's great. You can hand hem. I do sometimes. But a blind hem or a machine hem is just so much nicer if you can get away with it, which I like to if I can. The hem on this skirt, because one, it's a calf length skirt, and two, I found a really nice thread. Is simply here's the, I just rolled the edge over twice and then machine stitched it. Um, but that nice sky blue thread line there, like it goes great with the fabric, and there's a lot of fabric, and I didn't want to bother. So I did not bother hand hemming that. Um, yeah. There's lots of other techniques. If you look up couture finishes, um, that's sort of a nice way to see, what are they doing at the fancy fashion places? What are they doing on Project Runway? Stuff like that. Like I said, I like taking Project Runway as inspiration sometimes for avant-garde couture or whatever. I think that's all the pieces that I brought to show and tell. It's just sort of nice to make sure that I haven't missed anything, but I think that's all of that. And my jacket, I remain really pleased with this jacket. I'd been working on it off and on last summer. And then I had a Zoom call with the DragonCon science track. And I was like, I need to be wearing something nerdy and fancy for my Zoom call with the science track. And so I put that together and finished it up last minute. I actually had to make my own shoulder pads for it because I didn't have any on hand. So I made my own shoulder pads and put that together. So yeah, finishing is fun. Sometimes it's real tedious, but it can just give that nice finish to your garment. And it can make it a lot more durable, which I think is always important, particularly if it's a costume you're going to sweat in, that you're going to want to wash for whatever reason. Or if it's just a costume you want to last for a long time. If you're putting so much love and effort into your cosplay, make it look good, right? Make it last so that you can wear it forever. Or until you're like, but new project. That's my problem. It's always, but new project. But I want to do the new thing and wear the new thing. Which is how I have 30 or 40 costumes in my closet. Some of them are kind of retired. Some of them are completely retired and I don't own them anymore. But most of them are just kind of shoved in there in case I'm like, but you know what I want to wear? I want to wear that Star Trek dress. I want to be Frankie Cook again from Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow. Which is honestly a fun, that's a fun, ridiculous movie. And I made the outfit from that. So maybe I'll break that out again someday. You never know. But if you don't take good care of your costumes, you don't make them well, they're more likely to fall apart on you. So, yeah. Any other questions or ideas, concerns, anything else? You got a last minute questions from the chat? Okay. So thank you for joining me. Let's see. I will be back next month for what should be the last installment of the Padme Amidala series, although I will probably, I can be pretty easily talked into talking about cosplay. So we'll see if I've got other stuff to share eventually in the future. But that will be Get Ready with Senator Amidala, where we'll talk about makeup. We'll talk about how I wear a costume, how I store it, how I clean it, getting into it, and then, getting out of it and dealing with it later. Yeah, so that is next month on the second Tuesday, whatever the second Tuesday of August is. I can't have any, I don't know about these things. There we go. Let's see. So here's today, the 13th, detailed decor and couture. This Thursday, we're going to have a special Let's Play Among Us, which is always fun. So everybody gets to be stabby space aliens. Stab, 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 kill, kill, kill. On the 20th, we have Marvel Madness. So not only Loki, no spoilers, I haven't watched any of it yet. But sort of all of the cool Marvel shows that have been coming out, and Black Widow's out again. I haven't seen that either, but we'll get there. I will see them at some point. We've got a Let's Play of Sea of Thieves Pirates Life. We've got our book club coming up. So yeah, come and see us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific here, right where we are now, twitch.tv/GeekGirlCon. Yeah. So, thank you for that. I will see you next month, and GeekGirlCon's Twitch channel will see you in 2 days, Thursday. So, have a great evening, and may the force be with you.